Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Alexander Chuluk and we are starting our webinar about Foresight methods. How could we use it for a proactive, science-oriented instrument for megacities and their future development? In my previous lecture, I've been telling you about different global trends and how to try to get a window of opportunity of a certain trend. Here in this lecture, we'll be talking about the methodology of Foresight, and I'll show you different instruments and how to use it for your own life in megacity or for your research or trying to understand what technologies or maybe markets could be in the future. So before we start, I'd like to present you, to show you a few interesting and funny pictures, but if we go in depth of such idea, not so funny, but quite useful for us. So, could we forecast the future? The first question, what should be in the center of our analysis. And here you can take a look at different understandings and forecasts of Mercedes-Benz, for example, or Bill Gates or IBM that were totally wrong. So, for example, let's start from Mercedes-Benz forecast, which was made more than 100 years ago. They told that the world demand for cars not exceed 5,000 because due lack of available chauffeurs. You see, now we see how driverless cars are using in cities, in megacities, and in the nearest future, everybody thinks, and each expert thinks that the car will be driverless. The same you can see very interesting forecasts from chairman of IBM. Told that I think that the world market for a computer could be around 5, not 5,000, not 5 million, 5 computers, the world market. Now you see how in a city, in a smart city, all sensors, technologies are digitalized in computing world. And such forecasts could be a lot, but why? Why these experts? Why these science-oriented people were wrong? That's a question that we should ask to each other. It's very important because now you see in the press and in scientific articles, in the conferences, you can see a lot of different forecasts about megacities, about green technology, about circular economy. But are we sure that such forecasts will come true? Because 50 years ago, 100 years ago, you see such forecasts were wrong. So another interesting pictures about the educational process, a view from 100 more than 100 years ago. You see, it looks like a matrix. The movie when a lot of different students or children at school trying to insert the knowledge into their brains. Now we know how brain-to-brain or brain-to-computer interfaces could be used, and we in high school of economics in Russia we produce such neural interfaces. You can just take a look. Another funny picture is about robotics. Now everybody, I guess, maybe those who are participating in this webinar now want to go for robotics. It's a view that is quite close to us. It's not 100 years ago, but what can we see? Can we observe such robots, even Sophia? I think you know this robot. Can we observe it in our streets, in our hotels, or at home? Well, I guess not yet, but this forecast was done by very how they thought scientific correlation basis. And the last funny picture before we go for more academic or more serious thoughts is an agricultural sector. You know, the view which is about 120 years old. They thought that in 2000 millennium, all agricultural landscapes would be such picturesque. Can you see, can you notice the same in your countries, in your megacities? Well, I'm not sure. So, what was the mistakes and why such forecasts, not foresights, but forecasts were wrong? First of all, we should understand how timeline and different forward-looking activities could differ in methodology when you want to talk about the future. If you're talking about just today, it could be just market research or strategic marketing research. If you want to go for 5 or even 10 years forward, you should use more enhanced and complex methodology like trend analysis, strategic monitoring, co-innovation, and trend analysis. And finally, if you want to go beyond the horizon of 20 years or 15 years, you should use very, very complex and sophisticated technology or social or institutional foresight. So the main idea why all these forecasts that you've already seen were wrong concerns that they made three types of mistakes. So the first type is that they underestimate how demand is evolving. They underestimate how different households and how different habits of us, of citizens, are moving forward. And this is very important not to make such mistake and make a good market analysis using neuromarket technologies and forward-looking activities. Second type of mistake deals with technology and understanding how they evolve. Technologies are not linear. This is very important. We cannot use just a simple approach when technology, for example, for smartphones or for telephones, they are getting smaller and smaller. It's not true. It goes at a very different and sophisticated curve. And after smartphones in a few years, maybe you won't have iPhone or other kind of smartphone. You'll have a brain-to-brain or brain-to-computer interface inside your brain. And if you look at a few movies, it's coming more and more realistic. Right, and mistake type of different mistakes which could be grouped in group number 3 is mistake about understanding that ecosystem is very important, where demand and supply could meet each other. In a megacity, when you could try to combine different methodologies, try to combine supply and demand using living labs, for example, laboratories, or clusters, innovation clusters, this type of mistake could be really solved and managed. But I strongly recommend you to think of these three groups, three types of mistakes very seriously. So why it's very important to think about the future and what we do in the foresight methodology. So generally, what foresight is? Foresight is a systemic approach which understands how global trends and challenges could open a window of opportunities or produce threats and real challenges for you, how the strategy could be constructed, and how your capacities could be used for this. Foresight always uses different opinions, mathematical modeling, creativity methods, and helps you to get on board all key stakeholders of the future. In the foresight activity, we by stakeholder we mean all type of people or companies that could influence sufficient achieving your goal. All right. So once again, when we're talking about the foresight, which is very important, foresight is not a planning. It's not a forecasting. It's not a trying to forecast a trend. Foresight is trying to build a future, to form a future with different stakeholders, understanding global trends and challenges and your capacities, and doing it in a systemic, periodical approach, not just once. You can do foresight once, but that wouldn't be a real foresight. That would be just a forecast, for example. And a foresight, science and technology foresight in particular, which could be used for understanding how megacity and how a real future of a smart city or green city could come true. It stands, such foresight, it stands on several basic hypotheses and basic assumptions, and I just like to share them with you. So the first very important assumption is that we are moving to a new production paradigm. We've got a few lectures in our course about new technologies in architecture or in building different cities like 3D printing, etc. But you should understand that all these certain technologies are just small pieces of the whole paradigm shift, which gets you to a principal new technological paradigm. It moves from just enhancing technologies to transforming global value chains, which is very important. You know that each company has its own place under the sun, and a global value chain is a very crucial for each company, even living in a smart or not so smart city. But what is important now? That these global value chains are changing. I think everybody knows about Uber concept. That means that you could directly connect demand and supply without any counterparts, and this is very important. But global value chains are changing. Hypothesis or basic assumption number 3 deals with action economy, and I think for you, dear friends and colleagues who are participating in our webinar and our lecture, this is very important. So it's not enough to know. The term knowledge economy is very important, but it's not enough. You should action and go from knowledge economy to action economy, when you can move very, very fast. In a smart city and a mega city, you can find a niche for such solution. Two more. The first one deals with changes in employment and structure. We move to a very, very complex and systemic employment structure when people should survive near robotics and digitalization. So how you could deal with such new technologies is a very open question. And the last thing is a new educational model. So please take like an imperative that you have to learn for your own life. You cannot get diploma, even if it is diploma of Oxford, HSC or other profound university. You just have to know that your skills are moving. Demand for your skills is changing. So don't treat your diploma like a masterpiece for ages. You should learn for your whole life. And if you understand all these hypotheses and basic assumptions, the next definition of foresight will be very understandable and close for you. So once again, this is a classical definition of a foresight, and you just could take a look, but the important emphasis is that it's systemic. It looks at the global trends, your capacities, and it deals not with forecasting the future, but with formulating and building the future. Actually, we do foresight exercises in the 5 phases. The first is pre-foresight, when you try to scan and to understand what's the topic and just set the task. Then you go for recruitment, when you recruit people or understand what methodology it will be, or maybe what methods you could use. Then you go for generation, that means the call foresight. Action, which is very important, so results of foresight should be implemented into decision-making process, and it's very important, and it differs from forecast, because pure forecast could be just like a document. And renewal, we always forget about homework and renewal. So 5 phases of foresight is very important, and please try to understand these 5 phases in this sequence. Okay, so if we go further, what is important for a good, a successful foresight? What is obligatory if we're talking about this? For sure, it's very important to disseminate results of a foresight to all group of stakeholders. It doesn't mean that you have to prove it on a high-level expert, which could be good but not obligatory. But you should identify, or how we call it, map stakeholders in all foresight exercises, and then disseminate all these results to stakeholders and beneficiaries. Why? Because foresight, it's not a forecasting or planning the future. Foresight is building the future. How could you build the future if you don't disseminate results to those who should be shoulder by shoulder with you? All right. Then you see at this slide that foresight faces a very interesting challenges like new economic paradigm, increasing an influence of new technologies, changing society, and the term megacity or smart city is also because of this, because society is going digital, and it lives on very interesting or sometimes new rules, which also could be an object of foresight exercises. We see how the struggle between globalization and localization is going on. If you take a look at different trade wars, for example, or geopolitical challenges, you understand that the foresight is one of the most competitive methodology and instrument to deal with the future. And as you know, the megacity and cities are starting to go for global competitive challenge. So their competitors are not their neighbors and other cities. We can see how different cities compete with the whole countries, for example. If you know, London by 2050 trying to transform one half of the whole territory from gray, how they call it, from gray to green. And this movement was done after a series of national foresights in the UK, and it's really very interesting how they engage society, companies, universities, and new technologies to get all this on board. All right. So when we deal with foresight exercises, we should understand what could we expect. And one of the role of our webinar is to teach you what type of results could we generate or could you expect from a foresight. So here you can see the differences between different regions like European Union, North America, Asia, or Latin America in foresight, different foresight results. But generally, generally we can obtain 5 group of foresight results, right? The first group deals with external environment. That's everything about trends, drivers, windows of opportunity, wild cards or jokers or black swans. These are the issues with a very low probability but high and a massive impact. So everything which we could get from horizon scanning is dedicated to trend analysis. So the first group of foresight results, this was trends, drivers, etc. The second group deals with markets that could be traditional markets or new markets, market niches, markets for blockchain results, or markets for Internet of Things technologies, or markets for 3D printing or New York architect technologies. So that could be different markets, and these markets could be also obtained from a good foresight exercise. The third group deals with products and services, and this is very important and sensitive for a megacity, because you know that the whole concept of megacity means that they should be produced a new type of services and infrastructure for the whole ecosystem. And using a foresight methodology and foresight exercises, you could get on board understanding of new product characteristics and intellectual services as well. Group number 4 deals with technologies. Everything about technology, starting from basic research, getting to applied research, technologies, innovations. So we draw different scanners, how we call them, or radars for technologies. Even we use a technological roadmaps for this. I'll be telling in a few minutes later about this. So there are lots of different other results, you know, like key forecasts or critical technologies or scenarios. But generally, the foresight and what you should expect from foresight deals with trends and drivers, markets, products and services, technologies, and the group number 5, skills, which is very important. New skills for you as you're trying to get more knowledge on board. New skills shouldn't be produced from the past or from the present to the future. They should be produced from the future to present. What I mean, if you just get a few new trends and try to understand what should be the new professions or what skills should you get on board, it could be done, but it's not so efficient. Which should be used? We call it a foresight for skills. When you first understand what are the vision of a market or what are the vision of a city or megacity that you want to get skills for, and then from the future to present you try to understand what skills should be on board, but not from the present to the future. This is important issue. All right, so let's go forward, and I'd like to show you how different foresights results could look like. And group number one, trends and drivers. We usually use so-called STPV or STPVL methodology, and I recommend you to read special literature on this. We call STPV. It means social, technological, environmental, economical, technological, already values, and political. That could be also legislation, like STEPVL. What it means, we see how the trends and mega trends are multidisciplinary, and we understand that if we just go into deep dive for one trend like environmental or values or technological, it's not enough. For a mega city, you have to understand the whole bunch of trends. This is very important. So it helps you to not to forget something crucial, and just to structure global trend analysis into some systemic vision. So once again, social, environmental, ecological, and structural, political, technological, and values, and sometimes we go into legislation as well. All right, so these are the whole structure for global trends, and you can listen for our previous lecture about global trend analysis. I just like to show you one picture from big data analysis or analytics that was done for climate change. As you know, for megacities, climate change issues are very, very important. And here, each dot and each trend, which you can see, you can go deeper and deeper. But even from this picture, you understand how different and how systemic the approach should be for better understanding global trends. So let's go for second type of results. It's markets and products. Here is an example from Russian Science Technology Foresight 2030, which was nominated by OECD in top 5 of worldwide for foresights. Here you can see a red arrow. It's a form of prospective products and services in different spheres like medicine, nanotechnologies, use of nature, transport, and space. I decided not to change the date. You see, 2015. Just for you to understand what is the accuracy of a foresight and how we could understand the efficiency of it. If you could just take a look, for example, in the middle is sensors or materials for chemical different sources or smart infrastructure. It's already our life. So this is the simple answer for accuracy of a foresight. We already see how it's going on. So if we try to understand what are their stakeholders, if you remember in the beginning of our lecture, we'll be talking about the definition of a foresight, and that foresight should get on board all type of stakeholders. How to map the stakeholders, how to identify them. So generally, we distinguish different groups of stakeholders. They could be inside the government, research institutions or research organizations, universities, companies, society, and development institutions. And you can see how all these different stakeholders could use foresight results in their own strategies or in their own opinions, right? So Now I hope that you want to know, to understand how to get such brilliant results of a foresight and how to get your foresight methodology consistent. So generally, there are around 80 different methods which Foresight uses, and this is just one type of classification, but I really like it. That was done by our big friend Professor Arthur Popper, and he distinguishes four groups of Foresight results. Now, the first group deals with evidence, like indicators, literature review, extrapolation, bibliometrics, pattern analysis, modeling. So all what we call in a classical forecast. But forecast is just a part of foresight. It's not equal to foresight. Uh, the second group, opposite to evidence-based, deals with creativity, like wild cards, science fiction, gaming. Um, what can I tell you? This is very interesting and sometimes ambition planning, like futurology or science fiction, but you should always understand what is the scientific basis standing beside that. This is very important. Because if you just read fantasy literature about the megacities or about the future of our life or the life in our future, that's good for your creativity, but it's not enough to make your foresight consistent and efficient, right? The third group of methods deals with experts, which is also very important. It's expert panels, different methods like Delphi, for example, which uses two stages of expert survey. When we choose experts, we use so-called connomination method, which is very important. It's a in classification, it's called like a formal method of identification. When we ask very sufficient or crucial experts to call another and then finally you've got your pool of experts. For experts from science, you could use different bibliometrics indices like Hirsch, for example, or the activity or publications or patents. Now, from experts for business, you can understand what's the size of a company and how you can also choose them. Well, generally, it's very important to deal with experts, but it's not enough as well, because experts are not multidisciplinary in their massive sphere. And the problem with experts is that they are trying to go for lobbying their interests. It's also you could also face it. So the last group of methods deals with interaction, like citizen panels or conferences or seminars. And the tricky question is, what group of foresight methods should we choose for efficient foresight for a megacity? I would recommend you to use all group of foresight methods. I mean that at least one method from each group should be used. And in this case, the accuracy of your foresight would be higher, and this is very important. And when we do foresight, we sometimes use two different approaches. The first approach is technology push, and it also very interesting for megacity conception, because megacity stands upon different technologies like Internet of Things, like new transport technologies, smart grids, new energy technologies, new medicine and new biotechnologies, if this is a city for aging population, for example. And when we understand how new technologies could push the future, this is very interesting, but not so easy, because you should go in depth into evidence-based methods here and into creativity as well. The second approach is called market pull. That means that you understand what is the demand for different products and services, and what should be the technological portfolio to create such products and services for such economy. I combine these two methods as well, and I strongly recommend you to think how to make your own foresight methodology for megacity efficient. Because generally when you go for, once again back, when you go for technological push approach, you could understand the new technologies and technological landscape, but without marketing, without market approach, all these technologies, well, just could be useful, and it's better to use two approaches. Now, I'd like just to share, that was adapted by Keenan, Michael Keenan. I'd just like to share a few ideas how to combine using these principles that we just discussed, how to combine different Foresight methods. Well, for example, methodology number one, you can go and you can start from scanning and go for Delphi expert survey, then identify wildcards, go for citizen panels, which is important and very important for megacities to have a pure democracy on them. Then discuss results on the expert panels and with SWOT analysis. You know, I guess everybody knows what SWOT is. It's acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You can start from SWOT. It's also possible. Then go for expert panels. Then go for citizen panels, wildcards, Delphi, and scanning. What I would not recommend you is to start from modeling, for example, and then go for literature review and scanning and patent analysis, because it's also all these methods are in evidence-based corner. So generally, the principle is that you use different type of methods in your Foresight exercise. In this case, it could be successful. Of course, you can try to make a Foresight only on expert methods or on modeling, but in classic approach, this wouldn't be called a Foresight and a fully fledged. Another very powerful instrument of a Foresight is road mapping, and this was adapted by Robert Fall, and I recommend you to just Google this expert. And what is a roadmap? Roadmap is a systemic Foresight tool which helps you to understand how the object that you choose and you're choosing for road mapping is moving in time, and how different layers which this object consists of are interconnected. So once again, you choose an object, then you go for a timeline, then you classify this object. I mean, you try to understand which layers could describe this object, and then you understand how all these layers are moving in time and how these layers are interconnected. You can see it on a roadmap for an industry as a typical, and the layers could be like market, product, technology, R&D programs, and resources. What is important here is that the connection of layers helps you. You can see this bottom-up approach from resources to R&D, technology, product, and markets. It helps you to understand how to reach a goal. Because if, for example, you decide to go on market M1, that means that you have to start investing in R&D just maybe 2 or 3 years before. But now you can go only on market M2, and you can see it in the red line here. Roadmap is a very important and very interesting instrument which could be used for a megacity. For example, in China, in UK, and even in Russia, we do road mapping to better understand how Foresight results could be used by all stakeholders. And road mapping is trying, and it helps to make these results implemented, which is very important in Foresight stage. Well, general Foresight results could be classified into tangible and intangible. For roadmap is a tangible results, or like scenarios or critical technologies. All these are tangible results. But which is also very important for Foresight is creating intangible results like networks, common understanding, and the spirit of a future in a Foresight. So this like networking. So this intangible results are also very important in the road mapping activities. Just a few more examples about roadmap. This is a roadmap of America's transition to hydrogen economy, but as you can see, the layers are not connected. This is just horizontal roadmap, and we cannot call it a fully fledged roadmap in our understanding. So this one is also very funny. It uses the idea of a metro map, and the company which produces such roadmap is called Now Next. You can see it in the sources. This is a roadmap of global trends to 2050, and it looks like a roadmap. Each line is a mega trend, and when they meet each other, you can see some very big and huge issue, or maybe an accident. It depends on the trends. So this could be called roadmap, and I'd just like to present you a more classical roadmap, which was done for ICT. You can see it in a vertical form, like objectives for ICT. Then we go for trends, markets, and products. So you can use road mapping in different spheres. It could be done for traffic jams, for medicine, for education, for a megacity like a whole concept. But generally, once again, roadmap is a foresight systemic instruments which should or which could show you how the object that you're choosing for road mapping is moving in a timeline, and how different layers which describes this object are interconnected. And this interconnection is quite hard to do. But if you already done this process, this is a very powerful foresight instruments. So the last slide that I'd like to share with you is basic foresight foresight principle, which is also very important. Once again, we distinguish obligatory and additional foresight principles. The first one is the time horizons. So I recommend you to go for foresight at least for 10 years, and starting from this period, that could be to 2030 or maybe 2040, 50, it's up to you. It's very important to get and understand the participatory of different stakeholders, and use serious criteria for experts, like publications in peer-reviewed international journals, or patents, or co-nomination. It's a formal method for experts. It's very important to understand the number of involved experts. We recommend to get on board more than 100 for national foresights. For megacity, it could be at least 50, but I think that for a good foresight for megacity, it should be more than 100 as well. The methodology should be evidence-based, once again, and used at least one method from each for group. And which is very important, all foresight results should be integrated into decision-making process. And for STI, science and technology policy measurements, for example. So they could be used foresight results for fine-tuning, for searching objective criteria for priorities, for involving business and society, for increasing openness, or for elimination of interdepartmental barriers, for example. So all this is very important in foresights. In addition, it's very crucial to have a good and professional team on board. We always trying to verify the methodology with international experts. You should understand the linkages between the logic of a project, because foresight could last for years, like 3 or 2 years, and you shouldn't forget the logic. And the final is dissemination. So it's a crucial principle for foresight that all the results should be disseminated to key stakeholders and beneficiaries. This is very important in a foresight exercise. So my last slide is about action. It's quite easy to talk about the past. Maybe it's not so easy, but you could think about the future. But what is quite hard is just to start now, in our present. So I really hope that our lecture and webinar will inspire you for action in your megacity activity. Thank you.